Fantastic. So for all the participants here, we've known Sarah for a good amount of time. She's amazing. And so, really here, she's the Vice President of External Affairs of the Healthy Green Schools and Colleges as part of the Healthy Schools campaign. So they do a lot in terms of, across the board with food service, with a number of other elements with the Healthy Schools campaign. The Healthy Green Schools and Colleges is focused on more of the kind of facility, healthy cleaning, other elements of, around some of the facilities elements here. They have an amazing assessment, which I'll share after her presentation that you guys can take. And I would recommend kind of looking at. They run amazing events as well. And so I know you're having their summer conference there that anybody can join. So we're happy to share that as well. But she's going to bring a lot of really interesting insights, some case studies and things like that around some of the environmental trends that are really impacting school districts, higher ed, throughout the country. So Sarah, I would love to, you can make an introduction for yourself, and it would be great, getting into the presentation here.
Thanks, Chris. I appreciate the kind words and the opportunity to be part of this virtual conference this morning. So thank you so much for that. As Chris mentioned, my name is Sarah Porter. I'm the Vice President of External Affairs at Healthy Schools Campaign. And I am going to be sharing with you today. We're going to be talking about what we're hearing and seeing from K-12 school districts and higher ed institutions across the country in terms of their commitments and work towards really prioritizing health and sustainability, and kind of what the current trends are that we're seeing from them right now. So that's going to be the focus of our time together. Before I get into that too much, I just want to tell you a little bit about the organization that I work for and my role so that you understand a little bit of sort of how I spend my time and my work with school districts. Our organization, Healthy Schools Campaign, is a nonprofit organization that's based in Chicago. We've been around for almost 25 years. And actually, last month, I celebrated my 18-year anniversary at HSE. And our entire body of work is all about working with school districts. That is what we do. We understand how they work. We partner with school districts all across the country. All of our work is really based on the foundation that healthy kids are better learners. We all know that to be true, obviously. But we try to help figure out what are all the things that are going into creating a safe and supportive school environment, and what are the things that schools need in order to provide that, but maybe don't have. And so whether we're looking at the kind of school food that's being served or the amount of physical activity that kids get during the school day, or working on expanding access to school health services in schools, or looking at facilities operations and maintenance practices and making sure they're prioritizing health and sustainability. Whatever the topic is, all across the board, we're doing that by engaging with school stakeholders who are in the school buildings every single day to really understand from them what's working well, what's not, what is it they need. And at the core, we're an advocacy organization. So we are trying to take the lessons that we learn from schools and translate them into good, sound policy recommendations. And so sometimes we're working on a school district policy, sometimes it's state legislation or federal legislation, depending on the particular issue. But the idea across the board is that our organization's work is all about supporting, in particular, public K-12 school districts with a very strong focus on students and families and schools and communities that are traditionally underinvested, underprivileged, underserved. In our school facilities work, a program called Healthy Green Schools and Colleges, we also engage a lot with higher education institutions as well. And that is the program that I spend a lot of my time on. And so in my day-to-day work, I'm talking with school facility directors from Maine to California and most states in between, from large districts to small districts to places like Chicago Public Schools being right in our backyard, but also huge universities like the University of Georgia, the University of California, Riverside, and some tiny districts like Cape Elizabeth, Maine, Issaquah School District outside of Seattle, kind of big and small and in between. That's how I spend my time. And so today I've put together some information about what I'm hearing from school districts in our work in this program, and I'm excited to share that with you. If you're interested in any of the other work that Healthy Schools Campaign is doing, please don't hesitate to reach out. We've got a lot of cool stuff going on. I mentioned that the foundation of our work is really like what I used to say, the notion that healthy kids are better learners. Well, it's not really a notion, it's a fact. And it's exciting that over the years, especially in recent years, there's been some really sound research that has helped back this up, that has really helped make the connection for school facilities folks, for school administrators, that there is this strong connection between academic achievement and overall student health and wellness, that there is a connection between the space that students and staff show up to be in every day and their long-term health. This becomes so important because these are the connections that folks on the ground have known and understood always. But having the science to back it up, it really helps us take a look at like what are the trends that we need to be looking at? What's the data that's available, and like what are the different practices and policies that we can help put in place in order to make sure that students and staff have healthy spaces. I'm going to give you a couple of examples just as a refresher because this never ceases to like blow my mind. There was a review of 20 years of data that had been collected that provides strong evidence of the potential to improve children's health by improving the quality of the air they're breathing, by reducing concentrations of harmful pollutants. So directly, healthier air equals healthier kids. In Los Angeles, there were air purifiers installed in schools, and after that, student performance improved almost as much as it would as if class sizes were reduced by a third. So here's technology, an example of how technology can really help. Not only can we physically move kids around and change the spacing, the number of people in a classroom, but there's evidence that that change of air and cleaning the air really does have an impact on student performance. Researchers at the University of Tulsa found that fifth grade students' math scores increased along with increasing ventilation. That, like, again, to me just blows my mind. More ventilation, cleaner air, kids are awake, kids aren't missing class because they're having asthma attacks and getting headaches, better ventilation, better math scores. And the last one, just as an example, show a study from the Global Action Plan, the Phillips Foundation, and the University of Manchester suggests that maintaining lower air pollution levels by 20% could improve the development of a child's working memory by 6.1%. That's 4 weeks of extra learning time per year. So again, this is not new, but I think it's important for us all to remember, like the science is there that backs this up, and now we need to put into action. How can we best best protect students and the staff, of course. The good news is that school districts and higher ed institutions have been taking this information seriously. They are doing really exciting things around really prioritizing not only the health of the environment, but the health of students and staff in their buildings by changing their practices, by using technology, by learning from one another about what's working and what's not, and sharing. These changes really support student attendance, staff retention, and help contribute to a positive community perception. School facility work to me is akin to school food, which is my other area of expertise at Healthy Schools Campaign. And it's similar in that it just gets an undeserved bad reputation. Too often, school facility departments and their teams are not respected. They're not respected or recognized nearly enough for the incredibly important work that they're doing. And some of the things that school districts and higher ed institutions are doing as of late really create an exciting opportunity for positive recognition for those teams and the work that they're doing. And we're going to look at a couple of those too. There are a billion examples of schools doing really incredible stuff. I'm going to highlight just a small handful, and then we're going to talk about those trends that I mentioned. In this example, a district that we work with, West Allis, West Milwaukee School District in Wisconsin. This is a perfect example of work that's being done that is sort of low-hanging fruit, a great and easy place to start. Through working with our Healthy Green Schools and Colleges program, and some of the first steps this district is taking in order to try to make sure they're in alignment with our standard. They took a look at the procurement practices that they have and really dove into what are the chemicals that they're buying. And under the leadership of Steve Eichmann and undertaking this project, they learned that they were buying 30 different chemicals across the district. Buildings had different things. Not everybody was using the same stuff. They didn't even know necessarily all the things that they were purchasing. And so trying to meet the standard actually was the impetus for them taking a look at this. But the result was that in going through and trying to make sure that they were choosing the best chemicals that they could be using that are the right ones for the job and the safest ones available for those jobs, meant that they ended up streamlining their inventory from 30 different types of chemicals down to only 8. This kind of thing is exciting because it means that they're able to streamline their inventory management, streamline their training. They can move staff from one building to another really easily because everybody's using the same stuff. So again, small step, but just an example of how school districts and higher ed institutions are really prioritizing health and sustainability. Another example is North Carolina State University and their amazing director of environmental services, Ada Baldwin. Her team was one of is one of a number of institutions. I think there are 7 or 8 in total that have earned the Green Seal certification. That is really all about sort of what they're doing on the custodial side. What are their daily cleaning, and cleaning, sanitizing, disinfecting, all of those kinds of tasks that the custodial team is taking on. And they were one of the first to take it upon themselves to figure out how to take a look at that standard and meet it by really prioritizing healthy and healthier and safer chemicals and cleaning practices. Boston Public Schools is one of those like all stars out there doing amazing things, in particular around indoor air quality monitoring. That district has an incredibly sophisticated, fully integrated IQ monitoring system and has really been a trailblazer for other school districts to kind of figure out like how this can be done. What are the benefits? What is all the data? Taking a look at the data that they're collecting, making it publicly available, and then using it to inform what they're doing on a daily basis. If you've never had a chance to hear Catherine Walsh speak on this project and their program, she does it often. Highly recommend seeking her out, but really, really cool stuff going on there in Boston. And the last one I'll mention, again, there are so many examples, but a few just I wanted to call out. Chicago Public Schools was actually the first and at the moment the only district to earn Healthy Green Schools and Colleges certification. Our standard goes beyond that Green Seal certification and really focuses on all the things that fall within the purview of a school's facilities director. So school districts and higher ed institutions that are working towards meeting this standard are looking at everything from cleaning and sanitizing and disinfecting to floor care to integrated pest management and IEQ monitoring, all the stuff. Chicago Public Schools took on this challenge, which was not a small feat for a district of that size. But they really are doing some incredible stuff to prioritize health and sustainability and wanted that third-party validation. And so last year we were able to award them the first ever certification under the Healthy Green Schools and Colleges standard, which is pretty exciting. And goes again to that like creating opportunities for recognition and improving staff morale, making sure that the larger school district community and school districts across the country are able to kind of recognize them and understand the commitment that they're making. So we know that the research supports healthy kids are better learners. We know that school districts and higher ed institutions have been and continue to make incredible strides towards improving their daily operations and in their work to prioritize health and sustainability. But what are the current sort of trends and challenges that they're facing right now? Um, in my work with school facility folks, we have these conversations all the time. And there are three top things that kind of really jumped out at me when I started to think about this. So I'm going to take you through those top three trends. I think they may not be necessarily a total surprise, but I think really spending some time thinking about each of them and what the implications are and how school districts are meeting these challenges and the creative solutions that they're coming up with is definitely a worthwhile exercise. So that's what we're going to take a look at. Trend number one, not a shocker here. Budgets are cut. Facilities departments are understaffed. Like this is not new. But and I feel like I've said this before over the years, and yet every time I say it, it continues to be more and more and more true that more than ever before, the budget cuts and the challenges that school districts and in particular and some higher ed, especially state schools are facing is really unprecedented, the challenges related to the budget cuts. And this is happening, for a number of different reasons, but it is creating challenges and forcing school districts to figure out how to operate in a way that they have not before. So trend might not necessarily be exactly the right word. This is sort of a status quo that continues to be exacerbated over time. If you look into this a little bit, and I just pulled like a couple of headlines that like this is everywhere and it's happening right now as school districts are really preparing for the school year that is about to start. You see these headlines, again, Chicago Public Schools being top of the list in terms of the budget deficit that they're facing. School districts, Columbus City School, cuts 299 positions to address their $50 million budget shortfall. Schools are under pressure and it's happening, but we all know that one of the first places that they look to when there are budget cuts are those facilities budgets. They're looking at custodians, they're looking at positions. There are cuts that happen there. And oftentimes without sort of a greater understanding of what the impact of that is going to be across those school facilities. But it is so often the first place to go to when the budget needs to be cut. I mentioned there's a bunch of different reasons for this happening. It's actually sort of like a perfect storm right now between ESSER money, running out, drying up, declining enrollment that schools have been facing over the past few years, and looking ahead over the next 5 years continues to be a troubling trend that needs to be addressed and planned for carefully. Surging operational costs between taxes and inflation, labor costs, everything. It is the whole global market has shifted, and the cost of the day-to-day work between the materials and the staff has grown exponentially over the last few years. And there also have been a number of state and federal policy changes that have layered onto this as well. So again, kind of a perfect storm that's leading into this. But the reality is budgets are being cut and school facilities teams are having to figure out how to do more with less. And I would actually add to that, I think we're at the point where they are forced to do less with less, where, for years already, facilities teams have had to figure out like how to be more efficient with less money. And at some point they kind of get maxed. And now the conversation with them is a lot about like, how do we define our scope of services? What can we not do any longer? What are the things that we need to prioritize over something else, something else in order to make this budget? How can we ask more of our team that is already, over capacity and maybe stretched pretty thin. So it is a challenging time. I would say that along with that, it's the kind of situation where necessity um, and that sort of, desperate place also begets innovation and creativity and collaboration. And I think that that is one of like the really positive things that I'm seeing from schools is figuring out like, okay, back to the drawing board. We've got even less. What do we do next? So one of the things that we're seeing, and this sort of brings us to the second trend, is that school facilities teams are looking to technology to help fill the gaps that they're facing. In a profession, in an area of work that in some ways has been sort of on the slower side to make advances. You have a lot of staff that are doing the same thing they've done for a long, long time and are maybe a little resistant to change. This current situation in the last year or two have really challenged those teams to think creatively and to look towards technology to help make sure that their operations are running as efficiently as possible with the resources that they have available to them. This has really forced them to shift towards a data-driven model for operations and maintenance, really not only using data to look ahead at what are the things that are coming, what do we know about our spaces and where the people are and what the needs are, and how can we adjust what we're doing to meet those needs, but also connecting their different systems to one another. It's sort of, I think, the dawn of a new era where facilities teams are collaborating with other departments in a way that they hadn't really needed to before, where technology is kind of front and center in a way that it really hadn't been previously in facilities work. And it, not that it wasn't there, it's just, it's new, it's growing. And I think really creating some exciting ways for those teams to get their work done. A couple of examples. We see more and more and more school districts utilizing work order management and maintenance systems. Again, not new, but the number of districts using this, and big and small, but also the degree of adoption and the sophistication of these systems has really expanded pretty significantly. It's helped facilities teams sort of shift from managing planning all of their daily work on sort of a routine basis. We clean these spaces this number of times. I can plan to, refill this paper towel, dispenser in this bathroom this many times a day, sort of shifting to like, this is what we do because this is when we do it each day, to really sort of deploying the team and the work in response to what the needs are in those spaces. And so different types of technology, crowd comfort is one of them. There are others as well that really give facilities managers and their directors the ability to see what's happening in their buildings every single day so that they can then figure out how folks need to be deployed differently. The communication between staff and between departments is just opened up significantly. It's been pretty exciting to see. I would also say that like leveraging AI is a huge thing with school facilities teams right now, trying to figure out it's here for all of this. It's here to stay. How can we best use it as a tool in our work? And we're seeing school facilities teams really dive in to that world to help so that they can figure out how AI can help them with predictive analysis, how it can help them with staffing models. I think that there's a lot more to explore there, but I think gone are the days where where school teams are maybe not using technology to the degree that they could, or they're more on the cutting edge, I guess is what I'm trying to say, than ever before. And maybe we weren't thinking of facilities teams in that way in the past, but really on the cutting edge of figuring out like what is the technology that's out there? How can we collect data and use it to our best advantage? And I think that there's a lot of incredible opportunity out there with that. That brings us to trend number 3, which is even in the midst of all of this technology, people are still like the core of what's happening and are the biggest asset that school facilities teams have. Investing in their staff and in really focusing on staff morale become just so unbelievably important because folks, people are the way that everything gets done, right? And so, in order to really introduce all of these different technologies, you have to have a staff that's willing to do it. You've got to bring them along on your journey. And what we're finding as facilities directors across the country are integrating more and more technology into their operations. They're also really focusing on making sure that their own skills are developing in terms of change management in particular. All of those soft skills that are about leadership development and staff engagement and clear communication so that they are able to not only work with their staff to understand what the needs are, then also manage up. They're making the budget case for the things that they need and sort of fighting back against some of these budget cuts. And then figuring out how to bring their staff with them and introduce new technologies, new equipment, changes, communicating budget cuts, all the things that they're doing is really, really forcing them to kind of flex those change management and interpersonal skills. And again, not new, but I think being really being challenged in a way right now that is even more than normal. We also see school facility folks really prioritizing leaning into their networks of other school facility folks across the country. This is something that our Healthy Green Schools and Colleges program provides, but there are lots of places to do it. And we are really seeing more than ever before school facilities folks attending conferences, leaning on that network, learning from other schools. What are you doing? How is this working for you? How'd you figure out how to pay for that? What were the challenges? All those types of things, because that community, that peer community really is a place for them to share not only their successes, but learn from one another's. And all of Healthy Schools campaigns work across the country with school districts in every area of our work. School districts learning from other school districts about how they're doing something is one of the most impactful ways for them to move things forward. And we're definitely seeing that now more than ever. So in all of that, I would say we've got these 3 trends from budget cuts more than ever to looking towards technology and really figuring out how data can serve them to help fill the gaps that they're facing, to really prioritizing people. Those all of those trends happening right now and taking us all the way back to sort of where we started is the good news is that schools are doing this. K-12 districts are doing it, higher ed institutions are doing it in spite of the challenges that they're facing right now. They're leveraging that innovation and that technology to really figure out how to really best prioritize the health of their staff and students and the planet so that they can make sure that their learning environments are everything that they need to be and everything that those kiddos deserve. So we're excited to see that. We will continue to work with school districts and higher ed institutions in their commitment to this work. And I'm in our program in Healthy Green Schools and Colleges, we have a standard, as Chris mentioned, and an assessment and tons of tools and resources and change management things. and most importantly, a community of school facility folks to come and share and learn from one another. And so I really appreciate the opportunity to share some of these insights with you today and invite you all to learn more about our program and participate if you're not already. But thank you again, Chris, for the opportunity. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, great. This was a lot of really interesting kind of facts, figures, trends. I like the examples, and I think as you mentioned, it's all about how do we together lift all boats, right? Like nobody's should be isolated here. We should be learning from each other, and we should be, looking at how do we improve, right? Based on that, we all know that all environments are a little bit different. The politics of it, the different ways that bureaucracy works in these organizations, but there are ways that cut through that, right? And I think districts, higher ed institutions are all looking at different ways to do that and are doing some really cool things that we can implement.
Yeah, absolutely. It's fascinating to see, and I'm constantly just in awe and inspired by the facilities professionals that I work with, their commitment to showing up every day to often a very challenging environment, but they're there to make sure that kids have what they need, and there's nothing more honorable than that. And it is really an incredible group of folks to get to work with every day.
Fantastic. Well, I do want to say for any attendees, there is you can ask a Q&A. So if you have any questions for Sara, feel free to put it into the Q&A box there. You'll see it at the very bottom of your Zoom screen. But I have a few questions just in general that are coming through. First and foremost would be interesting to know a little bit more about your assessment process, how people could get involved in that. What are you looking for? And anything else around how to start to look at what they're currently doing.
Yeah. We have two assessments, and this kind of goes back to what I was mentioning about change management. So, in our Healthy Green Schools and Colleges program, I tend to think of things kind of in two buckets. One is on the more technical side. What are facilities teams doing every day in terms of their cleaning and operations, and maintenance? And we have an assessment for that is literally mirrored after our 42-page standard, that covers, again, all the things that fall within the purview of a school facilities director. And that Healthy Green Schools and Colleges standard has 100 points spread out across it. So when a facilities team takes that assessment, they're able to get back pretty quickly a scorecard that then tells them, based on what they're reporting that they're doing today, how do their operations compare to this standard? And it's a great benchmark. It's so that you know exactly, like, here's where you are starting. Our program then provides lots of resources and training and tools and all kinds of things to help create a roadmap for districts that want to ultimately earn a certification under that standard. So the assessment is a tool to help figure out like where you are right now, and is a tool that you can take again and again to sort of track your progress over time as you work towards earning enough points to get a Healthy Green Schools and Colleges certification. I mentioned Chicago Public Schools is the first one to do it. We've got other districts that are on their heels, but are always looking for more to take on that challenge. It's an incredible opportunity for recognition. The other assessment, though, is a new one that we just launched earlier this spring. And this one is much more about readiness for change. And there's, like, again, the more technical, like, what are you doing every day in terms of your operations? And this side of the work is much more about, like, how you get stuff done. What are it's more of the intangibles. All of those, thinking about the factors that are necessary for creating lasting change, like having a clear mission, like effective communication, having support of your leadership. So that assessment is really, again, a series of questions, but you get back sort of a scorecard that helps you understand, like, if you're really looking to create lasting change, here are the barriers that you're facing, and here are some specific action steps for what you might need to do in order to address them. So much more on the change management side of things. So two assessments, totally different, but both great resources that we invite school facilities teams to take advantage of.
No, that's great. Again, change management is a big part of all this, right?
Mhm.
I think there's an element here where, in talking with districts, it's kind of the status quo isn't viable anymore, right? We need to kind of look at different ways that we can change and optimize, and then that's why we're kind of launching this event, and also why we talk to districts is because the same old things aren't working the same way, and so it's kind of for survival, we need to kind of push that forward. One thing I know you guys are big on, right, when you're working with districts, is you're very hands-on, consultative, and just in general, you're looking at kind of low-hanging fruit. Again, I think every district would love to build a new high school to replace kind of the old aging infrastructure that they have, but not everybody can afford that, right? Especially with the budgets the way they are. Can you go into a little bit about some smaller things or low hanging fruit that people might want to think about when they think about healthy, cleaner environments?
Yeah, absolutely. And that is what our program is built on. It is all about prioritizing low and no cost measures to improving indoor air quality in particular. So none of this work is about capital investments, renovations, things like that, because as we if we've seen this trend that never seems to end is that schools don't have the resources that they really need. And so our program is all about focusing on that low-hanging fruit. I mentioned earlier the example of the West Allis, West Milwaukee district and changing their purchasing. That's usually the place where districts start with us. And sometimes, needing something like this to create the impetus to actually like sit down and go through it. It's too often it's like, oh, we'll just keep doing what we've been doing. And, it's been like this for a long time. It must be, for a good reason. Trying to meet the standard actually like creates like the reason for teams to like get together and go through all of this stuff. But taking a look at those purchasing decisions is an easy place to start. In that example, they really streamlined things and then had some bonus outcomes in terms of like streamline inventory and training and things like that. Another example, though, would be going back to Chicago Public Schools. They were going through the same process and they were actually trying to figure out how to get a couple of more points under the standard to get to the highest level of certification. And so they went back again they'd already been through all their purchasing, but they went back again to see what else they could take a look at and found that the toilet paper that they were spending $20,000 a week on, like, was not one that met our standard. And so they worked with their distributor to find a different one that was Green Seal certified and actually ended up costing them less money. And so they were perfectly happy with what they had, but trying to meet the standard was the reason that they were taking a closer look. And then they ended up finding something that was better for the environment and actually ended up saving the district money. So those are the types of things, that can happen. I think one other quick example I'll give you is sort of the opposite of Boston Public Schools that I mentioned earlier. Our standard requires IQ monitoring, and Salt Lake City School District, to get started, bought a couple of handheld CO2 monitors and just started walking around and taking measurements. And that is a low cost option that's so much better than doing nothing. And so we really try to work with districts on super practical baby steps to get them going. And those then become the data they collect from that becomes the foundation that they can then use to make a case for a different budget allocation, to expand a pilot program to eventually the kind of, fully integrated system that Boston has. So lots of examples, but all prioritizing that low hanging fruit.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting. I mean, I think the biggest thing is just start measuring things, right?
Mhm.
Have hypothesis, do some tests, start measuring things even at a small scale, because then that data can be used to start to advocate, right, internally.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's hard to push a program or push an expansion of something that you haven't done anything with, right?
Hmm.
And so when you go in, say, hey, this is the quality of our air, this is what we're seeing. If we expand it to this degree, we can improve all of these things from a health and safety perspective, but that impacts test scores, that impacts attendance, it impacts
Yeah.
absenteeism, right? And so we really need to start talking like the head of the district level, right?
Hmm.
And what they really care about, because again, I think with budgets, everybody's going to err on the side of the educational side and kind of neglect the operation side a little bit. And that's what
Yeah.
we see. And we know the operation side is really hurting
Yeah.
to provide those environments.
Yeah, and I would add, like, as a potential fourth trend, even, or this kind of nestles in one of the other ones, but thinking back over the last 15 years or so, there has been such a shift in that mindset in from school folks around, that coming from that place of we don't want to test because what we don't know, right? Like it's just better if we know we got to do something about it, and we might not have it was never from a place of like wanting things to not be in good shape. It was more like we don't have the capacity to do something about this, so it's better just to like let things lie as they are. Now to really, it's like they are much more in a place of like, we want to know everything and we want to know it first so that we can formulate solutions and action plans and really make sure that we're being super proactive. And that is a shift that we've seen pretty dramatically over the last 15 years for sure.
Great. And we get another question just on your assessments as benchmarks. How do you guys work with like state boards of education? How do you work with different states and regions with your assessments?
Yeah, great question. I mentioned early on that Healthy Schools Campaign at the core, we're an advocacy organization. So we really love to see policy, really sound policy that is rooted in input from school folks. Like that is like the goal. Our Healthy Green Schools and Colleges program, we actually built in after working on the wave of state level legislation that was happening in the early to mid 2000s. I think Illinois was the second state to adopt a law mandating green cleaning in schools, for example. Second state after New York. There are a bunch, but it became clear there wasn't an appetite for more policy at that point in time, and so we really shifted to creating this standard, and focusing on school facilities teams as like the really important agents of change, and focusing on getting districts and higher ed institutions to adopt the standard as sort of proof positive that like this is needed and schools want to do it and there is an impact, and then hopefully a stepping stone to more policy around that. So the answer to the question, I saw it too in the chat, is like, have any state boards adopted the, I would say not yet. It's also still, relatively new, and we have, Chicago Public Schools going through the program, I think was sort of proof positive for us. This works. And so now we're working on taking that and the standard and making sure that everybody knows about it. And so that is definitely the direction that we're going, having more districts and higher ed institutions adopt this standard. And ultimately, that would be our hope, is to see state boards of ed, and maybe someday, dare I say, federal policy that really supports school facility teams across the board.
Great. And then, I think when you think about some of the things that are happening on a healthy green area, what's something that organizations should stop today when they think about kind of healthy, clean environments that they're doing, and what's something they should start?
Oh, great question. Great question. I would say something they should stop doing, and this is a simple one, but it's amazing how hard it is for folks to let this one go. Stop buying bleach. like there's a million things, right? But like if I could start in one place, that would be that's one that just is over time, even though there's been tons and tons of progress, one that just feels hard for folks to let go. And that's the kind of thing that we would, not want to see in a school. And so I would say start there. But in terms of things that we would love to see schools start doing or continue or do more of, I would say connect with one another. There's so many incredible examples of schools doing work and really, really leading the way that if you're sort of not exploring beyond like the world of your own school community, you're probably missing out on a lot of great information and innovation and opportunity um, to really connect and figure out how to improve your own operations. And so I would say if you're not already actively participating in networks of your peers, start doing that. And if you are doing it, keep doing it and do it more. Oh, you're
Oh,
on mute though,
sorry.
Chris.
Yeah, and that's great. I think there's a lot of really interesting things that can happen when we get together. There's a lot of good groups like, the Healthy Schools campaign, where, you can build colloquiums. There's a lot of really interesting research with our partner FMX, with us, that we're constantly trying to work with organizations to not only understand what they're going through, but how to start to leverage technology and data to start to influence, right, that day-to-day actions. And so I think it's all a consultative approach about how do you manage the change management piece of it, but also how do you start to use data in a better way,
Hmm.
to test things out, because not everything, like, data is not going to give you a foolproof answer, right? It's going to be iterative. You're going to make tests, you're going to make assumptions, and you're going to see improvements. um, Great. And then, we also said, some of the EPA tools for schools is a great resource. Any other resources that they should be kind of looking at through you guys and your Healthy Schools campaign? I know you also have kind of your summer series that's going
Hmm.
as well, that we can share out to the audience.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. EPA Tools for Schools, awesome resources. Tracy Enger and her team, man, when she retired, I think everybody was like, no, we know them well. And actually, when we were building our standard, we very carefully looked at the other things that were out there. We were not trying to recreate the wheel. So we were very intentional about building in interoperability with existing things that schools were using that were really good. So if a school district is using the EPA Tools for Schools checklist, that satisfies criteria in our standard. Our standard is available on our website, Healthy Green Schools, healthyggreenschools.org. So the full standard is there for anyone to use. As Chris mentioned, we do a summer summit and a fall summit. And so I would definitely suggest, if you're not already on our mailing list, so that you can get information about upcoming programming and more information about how to join our program and work towards earning a certification for your school. I would definitely invite you to reach out.
Great. And I just do want to recommend, tomorrow there's a session on custodial, which I think is a really good session there. So if you go to their Healthy Green Schools and Colleges.org, go to news and events, you'll see that there. Quick registration. They're always really good sessions, listening to leaders, talk about kind of the things that are working, what aren't, which I really, really enjoy. Um, Fantastic. Sarah, any other parting thoughts before we kind of let you go?
Just thank you for the opportunity, and for school folks that are listening, appreciate the work that you do and the commitment that you've made to protecting students and staff. And I really look forward to hearing from folks that are listening. It's always good to make new connections. So thank you.